Everything good? Awesome. Well, it's after lunch, so we plan to be quite entertaining. I hope the folks continue to show up, but we're very excited to be here. I think we have a really outstanding lineup of quite talented folks in the content space. My name is Milano. Oops. I'm the media director working at Ogilvy West. We obviously are part of the content scene, and who isn't these days? So I would love to be able to introduce to you the wonderful panel. I'm going to let each and every one of them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do. And throughout our conversation, we'll make sure that you guys get to see a really good balance of perspective from agency side, myself included, as well as publisher, client, creators. I think this is a really, really great kind of well-rounded group of people. So without further ado, Anthony, why don't you go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anthony Laser. I lead the content operations team in the US for Dailymotion. Dailymotion is a video platform. It's been around for 10 years. It's the second largest UGC video platform in terms of traffic in the world. It's in the top 40 most trafficked websites in the world. And what my unit does specifically is manage content creators, acquire new content onto the platform, and develop those creators on our platform from a traffic and a revenue standpoint.
Great. Thank you, Tariq.
Hi, I'm Tariq Walker. I head creative development for branded entertainment at AOL. So that really is from ideation through to execution, creating programs that work both for our audiences as well as our marketing partners across all of our brands. So the AOL.com brand, the Huffington Post, TechCrunch, Engadget, MapQuest, et cetera. We're responsible for building a slate of programming, and then also responding to proactive sort of opportunities out in the marketplace to create, really interesting content that runs the gamut from wholly editorial with sort of a thematic integration of our sponsors' brand messaging to, nod, wink, wink. This is kind of a commercial, but kind of not. But runs the gamut both from the very short to 15 seconds through to probably about as long as I'd say 8 minutes per sort of episode, and then we typically do series that range from anywhere from 4 to 25 episodes of a series, and we have some long-running ones as well.
Excellent.
I'm Megan Camarina, also known as Strawberry17 on YouTube. I got started in 2007 making just videos of me in my bedroom being silly. And YouTube got bought by Google in 2008, and that's when everything changed. It became my full-time job in 2010. I won YouTube Next Up, which gave me $35,000 to invest into my YouTube channel, moved out to LA, and I've been here ever since, really trying to figure out how to create longevity in this space, because being on YouTube as long as I have, there are highs and lows, and you face irrelevancy. You can't always be, the number one or on top. And with algorithm changes and new waves of creators coming in, I hit a point in my career where I was like, how do I stay in this space and really continue loving what I'm doing, but being authentic? And I went and I raced around the world with my friend, Joey Graceffa, on The Amazing Race twice, and that kind of helped give me some new perspective, like, if I can make it up a hill in Switzerland in the snow, 3 miles both ways, then maybe I can find the oomph to really come back and do something new with my channel. Because it's always scary creating something new online that you've never done before. You kind of want to stick to like, this is like what will get me views, but this is what will make me happy. So the past 2 years, I've worked really hard to change my demo to millennials and created a show format. Instead of just doing one-off videos, we post videos Monday through Friday, and they have a very specific structure. And we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between that TV watchability, binge watchability, and the YouTube kind of feel. And that's what we do on Strawberry17. We're a team. It's much more than a YouTube channel now, and it's doing pretty great. We have over 1 million subscribers, and we're venturing into long form and new verticals and everything else that comes along with doing the YouTube thing. But yeah.
Thank you. Ty?
Hi, I'm Ty Randolph, the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Client Partnerships for a division within Sony called Relentless Generator. So we started out as the direct-to-consumer group within Sony Music. We were charged with a number of things around Sony's digital business, Sony Music's digital business. But one of the key things we were charged with was direct-to-consumer monetization strategies for its artists across the globe. We launched over 200 individually branded artist e-commerce shops, so everything from the official Bob Dylan store to the official Michael Jackson store, the official A$AP Rocky store. And a couple of years ago, we were transferred as an asset from Sony Music to Sony DADC with a real focus on bringing this competency that we had developed outside of the walls of Sony. So Sony Music's still our largest client, but particularly around direct-to-consumer monetization in the e-commerce space, we now work across music, television, and film. So managing over 500 individually branded e-commerce destinations, everything from the official Walking Dead store to the official One Direction store. They just had a new album that street it. We're into gaming, television, and film, as I mentioned. And as we expand into new verticals, we've really been looking deeply at multi-channel networks and digital content creators. What we really developed the niche for within the walls of Sony was finding interesting intellectual property or brands with really engaged and large fan bases and empowering them to sell and monetize directly to those audiences. So there were so many of those characteristics that we found when working with the likes of Astronauts Wanted and Awesomeness TV that it's really sort of like a key area of expansion for us. So happy to be here today to engage in this conversation.
Thank you. That's actually a really good segue into the first question that I wanted to open up to the panel was just the diverse sort of point of view on monetization because it's such a critical component of content and allowing it to really become the massive industry that it is today. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about the stores because clearly your monetization strategy and tactics vary significantly from, say, something that you guys are doing. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your point of view on how, like where you are with monetization and how that's changed, how it's going to change short-term and long-term. And then maybe we hear it from Anthony and everybody else in terms of how do you guys actually deal with monetization on each of your respective, platforms and initiatives.
Sure. Did you want me to start?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that'd be great. 'Cause, I mean, you actually have like an e-commerce-like product to
Absolutely.
go with.
Yeah, so we developed a proprietary direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform. So think like a Magento or Shopify, but specifically for media, entertainment, and brands that were trying to launch boutique experiences. So there were specific like rights management concerns, sort of like creative parameters, and just for context, not for sales pitch, we handle all of everything from merchandising to fulfillment to marketing. So really allowing you to kind of outsource e-tailing, if you will. And so many of the brands that we work with, that went through what I think we're seeing in sort of like the digital talent and MCN world now. Several years ago in the music industry, you usually have sort of these like big behemoth retailers at any point in time that really kind of control the ecosystem from a distribution perspective. So whether that's iTunes or Amazon, and so when you're really hot, right, they're those like sort of like top 10 or sort of like the top 20 on the Billboard charts or top 10 on the ratings reviews, and they're really getting sort of like share of real estate when it comes to these broader retail touch points. So when Sony launched their direct-to-consumer channel, it was really about how do you allow the breadth of artists who aren't in the top 10 at any given time to establish a direct sales channel. And I think what's interesting about what's happened, the way that we view digital content creators and YouTube stars or Vine stars, no matter what your medium is, we look at them as content creators with valuable intellectual property. And while I think the gold standard is being, sort of like the Michelle Phan, if you will, and launching a $100 million, sort of like raising $100 million, having a company valued at $500 million, really developing an empire, there's a broad section, I think, of outside of sort of like those top tier celebrities who still can make real money and establish a viable monetization. So for so long you saw advertising, branded sponsorship, and I still believe that in the short term that's going to be the majority of it. But what our point of view was, so much of this, so many of these really, really talented individuals are selling so much product for others. Why don't we allow them to develop product around their brand and monetize their brand like we would any other?
Megan, how does that work for you guys? Because, I mean, you clearly are working with a platform like Maker and YouTube. Like, how involved are you guys in the monetization sort of approach and tactics, or do you solely rely on them and you're, as she mentioned, primarily a creator?
We're quite aggressive when it comes to reaching out to brands. We definitely don't leave it in the hands of our MCN to do all the work for us. I believe in building strong relationships and partnerships with brands outside of that, because it's important. It's important to me, and I think it's important for my audience to see that too, because we've worked really hard to turn Strawberry 17 into a company, into a brand. In 2007, it was me. It was a girl with bangs in her face and a headband that would do lip jobs. But now it's, we're striving to create an empire. Full of a bunch of really awesome shows, and we want to create those great relationships with these brands. So in terms of what we're doing with Strawberry 17, like merchandising, that's something that we're definitely exploring, but I mean, we want to do it right. That's the tough thing. When you got started on YouTube, everyone was just putting their name on a shirt, and that was cool, for sure, definitely, but like, I do a lot of cosplay. I want to do a fashion line that is cosplay inspired. I want to do more than just maybe the basic need. And I know that it fulfills a certain like demo where they're like, oh yeah, I just want to wear your shirt, I just want to have it. And we do have that through Maker. And they're really great. We just came out with backpacks and lunch pails for school that were really awesome. I never thought I'd do that. That's kind of, it's nice. My job is a little bit strange, okay? Like when I got started making videos, never thinking it would be what it is today, and now that it is, it's exciting because there are endless possibilities. If I want, I could put out a candle. I can create Strawberry 17 candy. I mean, like, it's so vast that I have to kind of sit back and be like, okay, I have to be very intentional with what I do so it doesn't seem like I'm just trying to put my name on everything and sell everything. Because my audience will see right through that, and my brand starts to become watered down. So in terms of monetization, beyond that, that's something that we're thinking a lot about, but we're trying to be very, like I said, intentional about what we're putting out and showing my audience. And it builds a little bit more hype that way too, because it starts to become something that's exclusive versus just like, oh yeah, she has like a bazillion t-shirts, I don't want that.
Yeah.
In terms of reaching out to brands, we have really great relationships with Microsoft and ThinkGeek and a whole laundry list of other brands that I've reached out on my own to let them know, like, hey, this is my content. We film quarterly too, which is something that not a lot of YouTubers do. We have a whole year of content planned that we can send out to businesses and be like, do you think any of your products would fit with this line of shows, or when we're releasing this? Trying to really put it, like, give them a catalog to be like, hey, look, we're doing something a little bit different.
Your
If you guys want to,
yeah,
if you want to be a part of our next quarter, you totally can. Which I thought that's what brands would want, because isn't that how people plan their year, right? Oh man, this industry is just changing constantly because they'll be like, oh, maybe next quarter, it's just too much time, we don't really know. So we're struggling right now to kind of be the brand's YouTuber and build that relationship and meet them in the middle, but I think we're one of the only YouTubers that are really doing it this way, so it's kind of throwing people off.
Cool. Anthony, what about you guys? How do you manage?
You skipped Tari.
Well, she said she was going to
I
come.
have
She's the moderator, gets to do
I
what she
have
wants to do.
strategy here.
I appreciate that, though. This is kind.
Work with me.
Tariq and I go way back. I wouldn't want to step in his toes.
You can have a joint statement if you wish.
Thanks. You know, I think one of the things that's a very interesting issue at this moment is ad blocking technology with a lot of the browsers, and how that's becoming a big piece of the puzzle, the monetization puzzle. We make, you know, the majority of our revenue comes from in-stream advertising. When ad blocking technology gets to a certain point, then you've got to get in front of that. It's a constant back and forth of trying to be able to continue to serve ads to make sure that partners are getting paid, and it's not. It costs a lot of money to produce content, and so you need to make sure that there's a return on that investment. So I think one of the things that we've seen beyond kind of, and I think one of the things we'll see in the next few years as we look to find the best ways to monetize content is we're going to find more brands needing to be integrated into the content. And fortunately, I think I can remember back in the day when we were at AOL, there was a bunch of different sort of branded series, and I can remember them putting things together that were really strange pairings. There was one cooking series where in order to get a truck manufacturer's branding into it, they had to cook in front of the truck.
Are you talking about AOL, though? You're not talking about Dailymotion, though. You're supposed to be talking about that.
It's years ago. AOL is so far beyond that at this point. But what I'm saying is it used to be very awkward. And it wasn't because of the creators, it was because the brands weren't savvy. They were like,
it was somewhat forced. Almost.
Yeah, it was very forced. And I think what we're going to start to see is a little bit better understanding of sort of what Megan was talking about, how to keep things authentic. So one of the ways that brands will do that is rather than saying, I need to have my brand front and center in this content, they'll realize what the demo is that they're reaching. The demo is much more important than having their brand show up 10 different times. They'll be okay with the whole presented by card at the beginning, or having much more subtle ways of integrating their brand into the content. I mean, one of my favorite examples of this is what Crackle does with Seinfeld's series, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. It's that is heavily subsidized, if not totally subsidized by Acura. And yet you see maybe one Acura in there, he makes a joke about this being the obligatory product placement, and then you get on with what you're doing. And I think that works for everyone in that situation. And I think especially for us and for our partners when we're developing original content with the brand involved, I get a sense, and it makes me feel like we're going in the right direction, that agencies and brands are getting that. And so it's more about creating interesting stories that keep people engaged rather than having their truck shown throughout an episode.
So Tariq, is your monetization, I purposefully kind of like skipped you because I was kind of curious, obviously. Interesting because Megan and Ty obviously have somewhat of very more tangible products to sell, whereas AOL and Dailymotion are a little bit more on the other side of the spectrum, relying a little bit more on ad business and everything else from a partnership perspective that actually is a revenue stream for you guys. So would love to hear a company at caliber of AOL, how is that different for you guys in the content business? Is it truly and it may not be within the realm of your responsibilities or oversight, but would love to hear how you guys go about that, because the next question that I have, and you guys can all think about it and the rest of the panel as well, is how do you actually break through the clutter and overcome competition? And I think for AOL, it might be a little bit more intuitive and easier just because of its scale. There are other stigma associated with, bigger companies, including AOL. So I'd love to hear that from you. Is that a plus? Is that a minus? And how do you guys go about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Scale is and the way that we have it is a double-edged sword. But I do want to speak a little bit about monetization, because I think there's a point, and we actually probably could have given a joint statement, because I agree. Things are moving, and brands are moving toward being more integrated and understanding that there are more ways to integrate than beating people over the head. And I think as you see the rise of programmatic sort of ad buying, you'll start to see a shift to things that are either very integrated, very custom, whether or not they are thematically integrated or incredibly beautifully integrated without ever really mentioning the brand in the way that Anthony was mentioning. I think you're looking at sort of a shift that kind of leaves a lot of stuff in the middle, right? But has very custom and very programmatic, bots and buying over here and people building stuff and creating stuff that's to very specific specifications of marketing partners. So I think that when we think about where it is, right now there's a lot of stuff in the middle, and I think, as programmatic buying gets better, as programmatic buying starts to be informed by content decisions and choices, I think you also start to see the ability for more of the stuff that's in the middle to be pushed to the super custom, or we know we can get it by bots because it's hitting, the person who's watching Megan's video on this particular topic at this particular time because our algorithms have gotten it that correct. So I think you'll see some of that, and when we, when we're thinking about that creatively, one of the things we're thinking with our partners is not only how do we create high quality custom programming for you, but also what are the things that you need to do that we can help you to do, and one of the things that Ty and both Megan mentioned with retail, and that's one of the big opportunities for us. Like, how are we moving folks through video, actually through that purchase funnel? So if it's whether it's a Lowe's, a Target, a Home Depot, or Macy's, or whomever, how are we actually helping them to monetize in a different way using our custom content, and then also how can we help them with overlays and tech overlays for the programmatic?
You guys consider rev share as well in addition to brand and ad investments?
Yes.
Okay.
We are, and one of the things that I think we realize when you talk about sort of how do we plan on monetizing in the future, one of the things we realize is that there are a lot of folks, and probably some of you in this room, who have monetization opportunities, technologies, and otherwise that are going to help us to do those things. And so we understand that being open is part of our our platform and our ability to use our scale for good, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
very cool.
yeah.
And how do you see sort of like the landscape for competition? How do you overcome? I mean, scale aside, how do you differentiate yourself from other, like-minded companies, both in size and in sort of offering?
Well, the good news there is that I don't think in this particular moment in time there are many companies positioned the way AOL is. And I say this not because I work there, but because, Verizon just purchased AOL, you guys know, over the summer, right? So we got access to over 100 million persons who have mobile data, et cetera. We also purchased Millennial Media, which is a mobile organization, mobile app development. We also merged our sales organization with Microsoft to sell both across AOL and Microsoft's properties, Xbox, Skype, et cetera. So, we're kind of uniquely positioned at this very moment in time. Now, you ask a week from now, someone else will have cobbled together these sorts of assets. But what we have right now is the ability to go all the way through from mobile and really doing sort of true attribution all the way through to desktop, over-the-top, television, et cetera. So I think that gives us a competitive advantage in this moment. The challenge for us is to articulate that to the marketplace in a way that makes sense. It's just happened since June, between June and now, and so there's as you can imagine, in a big company, a great deal of turmoil in figuring it out. But I think we have an opportunity, and we're moving toward that. So it's really an exciting time. So plenty of competition. I think we're perfectly poised to kind of take a step ahead while we have the opportunity.
Cool. Megan, for you, that must be a completely different ballgame. I'm so interested, I'm sure everybody else is, like, as a creator, how do you stay kind of above the competition, and how do you manage that? How do you look at it? How do you, what do you do to stay relevant, to continue to stay relevant?
That's like the YouTubers' like nightmare. The like constant question they're asking themselves, because we get to see it. We see how views fluctuate. We see how numbers drop or go up. It's soul crushing. Like how well a video does. You're like, irrelevancy is knocking on my door. I need to step it up. It sucks. It's a horrible feeling, but it's even worse to chase that, though. That's what I found. So I've been on YouTube for almost 9 years, and that feeling doesn't even compare to the feeling of having to chase, like, I need to be relevant. And in 2012, Google changed their algorithm pretty harshly, and they left a lot of YouTube channels to the wayside. If you guys watched YouTube, you saw there's a lot of YouTube channels that were on the front page all the time. Like Daystorm is one of them. Now he's a popular Viner, so good for him. He switched platforms. But Google's harsh. They don't really care. They don't see the people behind, the cameras that are putting in all their work and dedicating their career to try and make become a YouTuber, you know? So I was one of those channels that got dropped to the wayside. No matter what I did, I went from being on the front page of YouTube every single week, getting over 1 million views, to barely getting 5,000 on my channel. And there was nothing I could do because it wasn't me. It was that Google wasn't seeding out my videos to my subscribers. I had become irrelevant, not by my lack of work, not by content or lack of work ethic. It was just the game. That's just what happened. So what changed with me was I don't want to be where YouTube is right now. I want to be where it is 2 years from now. And I don't believe it's necessarily YouTube is the only platform anymore. So what we do is we really work on trying to shape our content into being something that we're proud of. There's a game that you can play on YouTube where you collab with everyone and share their audience, and your views are constantly driving up. And I think that's great, and it works for a lot of people, and that's a specific type of YouTuber. But I don't think that's me. I don't feel authentic when I do that. I do like collaborating with my friends, but it has to be on a certain kind of level. And when I'm doing a brand deal, I don't want it to just be, a simple DSLR video. I want it to look nice. I want the brand to look at that video and be like, hey, this could be a commercial. Let's put this up on our website. That's how good it is. I want to sell quality, and I want people to see my brand and kind of be able to be like, oh yeah, they're one and the same. So there's a lot of stereotypes that we have to break being a YouTuber and having that kind of future mindset. So with me, I just try to remain authentic and keep innovating in the space because it is constantly changing. You will never figure out this holy grail format that's like, this is it. Every single time I post, people will love this. You have to constantly be changing. And that's what we do. And at the beginning, our subscribers hated that. We lost a lot of them. Oh, no. Okay. Do you need some water? Yes. You're dying on me, man.
That's really interesting. I meant to comment on it a little bit earlier, but I think you raised a really interesting point, and that you can have really amazing content, but if you don't have the distribution network and the support of solid distribution to go along with it, it could be detrimental to that content and that business. So,
yeah.
Ty, maybe you can speak a little bit about what you guys do, both in terms of the creation of the content as well as its distribution, especially being in the more entertainment and music-driven environment.
Sure. So I think in terms of, it's interesting because we're having this conversation around YouTube, but so many of the themes are just sort of like broader media, storytelling, and distribution themes that sort of like other industries or verticals have experienced. So it's sort of like, the passion that you were just articulating and sort of the frustration isn't dissimilar to sort of like the initial reaction that I received when coming out of the agency world and joining Sony Music, and it was really sort of this concept of being behind the curb on these broader, or not in control of these broader distribution channels. So it's like, I can't make iTunes do anything, or, like how much control do I have over Amazon and now sort of streaming services on the music side. And so I think it's kind of twofold. On our side, so I'll start with a content creator and then talk about our place with that. I think from a content creator perspective, it's always really impressive to me because I think for a long time we sort of talked very nonchalantly about YouTube talent, if you will, kind of in air quotes. And I think the complexity and the sophistication of what these content creators do is often a bit disservice. I mean, all of the functions that you have in at a major television network or film studio, you're often executing all of that out of a bedroom or your kitchen. So you're being talent and sort of like storyteller, writer, editor, producer, and then you need to be data scientist and digital marketer, all to figure out how to break through, to even get an MC in to recognize that you're talented enough to represent it, that there's a viable opportunity there. So I think at its core, it's a very complex proposition, whether you're doing it as an individual creator or whether you're doing it as a broader content company. But at the end of the day, for any content creator, content still is king. Even with the right distribution channels, if you don't have a good story, it's not going to matter. So when we look for partners, even though we only bring the monetization perspective, whether we're talking YouTube talent, and the reason why we even started to look at them was because we have a few key characteristics in terms of competitiveness. So, clearly we're looking at ratings if it's television, and we're looking at sort of, subscribers or an engagement on the gaming side of it. But ultimately, is there something compelling about this intellectual property? Can I make it, if there's a real story story there, then for me, that can translate to consumer products. For me, that can translate to subscription service, something to be monetized. And then the distribution piece of it, and that's a big part of the other piece, because we work in partnership with brands where they often we work on a rev share model, so they have to point their audiences towards their official stores. So do you have an engaged and a passionate audience? And I think what's really amazing, so the disadvantage I think that YouTube content creators have is that they probably have one of the fastest evolving distribution channels in terms of thinking about how to constantly flex to the actual technology and the algorithms and even consumers' consumption patterns. But the advantage that they have is this bi-directional sort of like 24/7 focus group on like what's working. And the ability to be able to flex to that and to be nimble, I think that's really where there's no sort of secret sauce. But I think sort of being good storytellers 101, because even with all the right distribution and all the right know-how, if you don't inherently have good intellectual property, if it's, if there's no reason to care, if there's no reason to share, then you're doomed to start. So start with a good story and then be really smart about all of those channels through which you distribute.
Very cool, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit more about your strategies. We talked so much about creation and distribution, but I think before anything else, it's really a solid content strategy that kind of determines the faith of what you're putting out there. So Anthony, would love to hear a little bit about how much lead time do you guys actually give yourself? Like, how do you go about, developing a strategy? How much line of sight do you have? Is it super sort of calendarized and planned out versus more opportunistic? Give us a little bit more.
So just to clarify, Dailymotion is a video platform. We actually don't create, we're not a production
You do not create
company.
what?
So when we're working to develop original content, it's with our partners.
Sure.
So one of the different programs that we have is, partners, we'll work with partners developing concepts that are either part of what they're planning to create throughout the year.
Right.
Or maybe it's a concept, a series concept that for one reason or another has never gotten off the ground. But we get RFPs, we get, we have different meetings with brands and agencies. And so that's usually a few months out. So what we start to do is we kind of have a deck of all these different partners that we're working with in a co-sales capacity. And so that tends to be a strategy that we're working months ahead of time. And then we often have, calendar events throughout the year that we do. For instance, an interesting partnership that was great this year for us was our relationship with Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival. So Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival has in June, or maybe it was early July this year, we know every year they're going to have a festival. And so what we can do is work months out letting brands know, okay, the exclusive live stream will be on our platform. And then as it got closer, because it's in the summer, McDonald's came to us and they said, we want to do both an on-site activation and we want to have media around your live stream. And so that becomes, you start to build the package out for them. So it's on-site, banners, in-stream advertising, and then they were particularly happy with being able to give out a lot of frozen lemonades this year. That was a KPI for McDonald's this year, was the amount of, they gave out more frozen lemonades at the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival than the Puerto Rican Pride Parade, which was an important KPI for them. So we were happy to help them put that together. So that was even outside of like a sort of video activation. So we have events like that throughout the year, but then we also work months out with brands to try and have like a flexible but timely sort of offering. Because, I mean, for us, our top partners are creating content and uploading content every day. And a lot of times it's linked to something timely. Maybe it's news, maybe it's a creator like Megan talking about something that is of the moment. And so that it's important to have a flexibility there.
Megan, what about you? In terms of your content strategy and your line of sight, like how far in advance do you actually know what you're going to shoot versus like
yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have a whole year's plan, like the whole entire year.
But do you have like places where you could be more opportunistic? Like if there's like some sort of a cultural relevancy where
Of
you want
course,
to jump on
our
it?
content can always shift. So we film quarterly, and like the perfect amount of time to tell whether or not a show is doing well or the content is like really gelling with our subscribers is 3 months. So we'll look at that quarter and be like, this was really great. I love this about this. I didn't like this about this. Let's change it. Let's evolve it. Let's try and make it different, which is what we're doing next year. But we have a solid structure. So if you go into Google Docs, we have a calendar, and there are one sheets for every single video that we have, and the one sheet basically details how to do the video. So if I can't be there and we need someone else to do it, it's already taken care of.
What's the frequency? Like at what frequency do you actually publish new material?
Monday through Friday, and we'll film. So when we film like in like a week. So 6 to 8 days, and we'll get close to 80 videos done for that quarter, and we're very efficient.
But you publish one a day, or it varies?
One a day. We have Monday through Friday on the Strawberry 17, and then also on the gaming channel. And when we're posting vlogs, it's the same format, Monday through Friday.
Cool. Tariq, what about you guys? What is your sort of approach to content strategy and calendarization?
We, so my group works with the editorial teams, and so we'll work with them in their editorial calendars, much the way that Anthony mentioned in terms of what are the seasonal things they know they want to do. Are there some, kind of tent poles that we know we're going to get behind? Are there some of those that we want to package and create, sort of more robust programs for potential marketing partners? Do we know that, the Super Bowl's coming, and we missed an opportunity last year with Frito-Lay because of XYZ. Do you want to think about that ahead of time? Because we know that HuffPost Food is doing the best snack options for Super Bowl, whatever the case might be, and figure out, is there something that we can build around that can be relevant and timely, but that we can also forecast. But then we have to be able to take advantage of things that happen, kind of in the zeitgeist, where is and why, and those things are harder for us to monetize in a way that my group does from a brand standpoint, because A, no one wants to sponsor news, in general, because it can, be a downer. And then B, oftentimes there's not enough in terms of being timely enough to get A, the content shot, but then also approved and otherwise when you're working with branded and work with brands, how is there, if there's an integration, how is that being, appropriately addressed, and otherwise just doing that in the moment gets very hard. Some brands are up to the task, and some publishers are and some aren't. It varies.
There's definitely clear definition and distinction between a strategy that's with a brand partner versus something that's a bit more organic.
Right.
Ty, how does it work for you guys? I mean, is your content is primarily branded with your own
so what
sort of
we're
products
doing
and
from a
artists?
content planning perspective, if you will, in air quotes, is really more around merchandising and marketing calendars that piggyback on the content that our content creators are creating. So we're in the process of, for first quarter, onboarding a ton of new YouTube talent. It's been interesting because they each have different programming strategies depending on the format of what it is that they're creating. So there's a musical, there's some talent that's a music act, but they're YouTube talent proper. They were discovered on YouTube. They're true to it. And they're a lot more organic. Like they're doing the sort of like behind the scenes thing with an upcoming tour. So it's like little snippets of everything that they're doing, and it's like largely unplanned. So we have to be a lot more nimble. But I was surprised by the amount of episodic content that's created. So, and again, that's why I said just impressed with the sophistication of it. They're thinking like real programmers. Like, okay, this is a once weekly show. This is, what goes into production. Some of them are producing far in advance. Some are on location and doing it on the fly, and their whole angle is about relevancy. I remember, and we didn't do a store for them, but when Astronauts Want It, which is a digital content studio / MCN, and it's a JV with Judy McGrath and Sony. And Judy McGrath used to run MTV, but when they were starting, we were in these content strategy sessions with them. We were still doing a lot of marketing services, and so we were helping them really sort of develop the brand. And it was interesting how the conversations are sometimes hard to follow. They talked a lot about this bi-directional content strategy, and I remember saying, like, I don't know exactly, how could you encapsulate the content strategy? And he said, it's vertical, it's horizontal, and what was interesting, and it sounded just like a bunch of jargon at the time, but as we saw it come to life, and the vision come to life. It was really much about sort of like what's planned and what's responsive, and in the context of that universe, being able to accommodate both. And so I guess there's no formula except that it's whatever best accommodates the stories that you're telling, whether those are branded stories or whether it's something, again, that's a lot more of sort of a point of view.
That's cool. I want us to talk a little bit more about format. Somebody else actually brought it up a little bit earlier. I think it's really interesting, obviously, with just the sort of penetration of social media and all of us consuming so much more on our mobile devices. Like, it's really interesting to hear from you guys. It would be great to understand when you think of producing a piece of content, whether it's video or anything else, how much do you actually think about the format, where it's going to be consumed, how it's going to be consumed, short form versus long form? Now we're all dealing with, a lot of content producers and brands being more and more interested in vertical videos because that's how we consume. So the way you actually shoot and consume a piece of content on your desktops are very different than your experience on your vertical device. So would love to hear a little bit from you guys, and it ties back a little bit with another sort of topic that we had internally talked about, which was creating for the future. How do you actually create content for now versus the future? And I think so much of it inherently is tied to our consumption habits and our evolution in how we actually go about consuming media, streaming media. So who wants to take that? I'll kind of put it out there if anybody wants to talk a little bit more about the format.
I'll jump in because I think the point your last point is so critical. It's it's all changing based on how we consume and where we consume, and so conventional wisdom will say, well, if people are watching on smaller screens, it's got to be shorter format, and that still holds to a large extent, but it's not as ironclad as it was 2 years ago, and in 18 months it'll be less so, and we'll be figuring out how to watch things in different ways. And so to your original question, in terms of, when and how do we think about formats? It really comes down to, from a brand standpoint, what kind of story are we trying to tell? And then also, what are our kind of key performance indicators for our marketing partners? So if is it about sharing and social reach? And we know we need to make sure that whatever it is we're doing, we're optimizing it for, we can, whether we do Vine cutaways or promotions via Facebook or Instagram or otherwise. And so when we're thinking about format, we're thinking about it practically because we want to make sure that we're hitting on the goals of, both the audience and the right mode that they're in, as well as the sponsor and what they're trying to communicate. So it's very individual. And I think we're in this weird point right now where everyone knows that you should be thinking about mobile first, but we don't. But we're not ready to do that yet. No one's. It's like everyone knows that privacy is dead, but nobody wants to go to the funeral. Like, it's one of those things. It's like, we gotta. So we're moving that way, and obviously Verizon buying AOL has helped us a great deal. Think mobile first. So my point in all that is we'd like to think mobile first, but it really does come down to the format, the opportunity, the marketer, and the audience. In that context, hopefully there's a mobile piece that can help drive it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the format is absolutely one key to understanding. I mean, for us, it's on Dailymotion, it's mostly people watching 3 and 4 minute videos, and then engagement tends to drop off after that. That being said, as we're starting to come to a point where different mediums are kind of melding together, where you can watch via Roku or Apple TV or whatever it is, short form videos on YouTube or Dailymotion, and then mix it up and go over and watch, your HBO Go series, longer form series. As those things start to get, those boundaries start to become more vague, I think the most important thing is understanding your audience. Rob Gable, who's the head of Tubular, always says there's riches in the niches. And so if you understand your community, your audience, then you can start to structure your content for what they want. So for instance, BuzzFeed, who's one of our partners, they make snackable content. Everything is mostly under 4 minutes. You're looking a lot of the time at about 150 seconds. So you're, 2.5 minute. Each video has a concise conceit, and each conceit they test, and then if something gets watched and people are engaged, they make more of that. If they starts to drop off, they don't make that structure and that format anymore. Another one of our partners, Defy Media, they have Screen Junkies, and Screen Junkies has a very specific audience and a very specific demo, and they'll sit there and they'll watch an 8 to 9 minute Movie Wars episode where they're getting into the minutia of, a movie that was made in 1984 that, no one saw at that time, but now it's like there's a cult behind it, and they want to hear every single bit, and, who was the gaffer that worked on this scene and everything, and they'll sit there and they'll be engaged for 8 and 9 minutes. So it's really, you'll find the riches in the niches if you know your niche.
Ty, for you guys?
Yeah, so we're not creating a ton of content. Like I said, we're working.
But how much does device matter for you?
Device is huge for us. I mean, we recently, in talking about really capitalizing or delivering on the mobile-first approach. For the first time this year, we saw mobile traffic to our network of stores surpass desktop, and it was like a real wake-up call. So we have been in this mobile-first by necessity. I mean, the consumer journey has totally changed. So where over, when I joined the company 3 years ago, when you were looking at multi-touch attribution then, and again, we were dealing with the different verticals, but the path to which consumers would end up coming to an official storefront was much different. It was, okay, I viewed this on television, you'd see a lot of direct traffic because it was sort of like that co-viewing experience. Or I was on this website and I clicked through to this link, and now we know it's much more about, like I discovered this song because I was listening to it on YouTube, and then I Googled this artist, and then I landed on their site, and then I clicked through and I went back to Instagram, and then they mentioned your product, and then I searched for that again, and then I landed there, and that all happened on their phone. Like every single piece of that journey. So not only when we think about like sort of what our interfaces look like and how we're displaying and how we make that consumable and as few clicks as possible to convert, we also have to think a lot about what people are willing to buy via a mobile device, because they're considered purchases. So when we know that we're stocking stores, and it doesn't matter if it's digital talent or otherwise, sort of what's your level and that appetite for conversion on a device? And that means a couple things, like what is the price point? How much do I need to know about that on here to make like a fully informed, considered purchase? So all of those decisionings, and I think that even the concept of mobile first, even though we haven't fully gotten there, we have to quickly get past that and just really think about cross-channel, because I don't think as a consumer, I necessarily think about when I'm on my mobile, or I'm not in mobile mind, or I'm not in, I'm viewing my television, but it's just that, I'm a multi-device, multi-platform, consumer and viewer, and I'm constantly engaging content from all formats, and I expect some level of continuity, but then also a certain level of nuance depending on which device I'm on. And so that's something that's been critical to us, and one of those things are when we've started to see that, maybe a year ago, we were probably at 30 to 40% mobile traffic versus desktop, and our mobile conversion rates were much lower, so we had to go back and redesign our entire mobile checkout based on those types of things. So it's a reality now, not just sort of like a concept or a philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, over 70% of my views come from mobile. YouTube is just
huge.
Yeah, that's where the viewer is. They're on their phone. In terms of the time frame, when I first got started, the shorter the videos were, the better the views, and that was like a format we all followed. But now it doesn't matter. People will tell you, but it really doesn't matter. I post an hour-long gaming video, and people still watch that stuff. A lot of our stuff is, I want to say educational, but it's teaching. So there's like our cooking videos, or I do Poppin' Cookin', which is Japanese candy kits made from powder and probably chemicals, I don't know. It's delicious. I make it and it's great. And they do well, but I'm like one of the only, well, not anymore, but like one of the first Americans to start doing these candy kits, and they take time. One of them is like over 30 minutes.
Oh, there's the clay-looking ones? The
Yeah, the little candy sushis and stuff.
Yeah, my kids are obsessed with watching that.
Well, they probably have seen my videos, because I'm one of the
so
only...
funny enough, I actually didn't mean to like interrupt, but my 6-year-old he gets like a certain amount of screen time every night, and last night of all nights as I'm prepping, he offered me 10 cents for an extra 15 minutes on my iPhone.
Oh my God.
Just because of that type of stuff.
That's engagement. That's engagement.
That's monetization. You're right.
Micropayments, it's all of it.
Yeah, he's like, it's my own money, I promise. Okay. Okay, so those candy videos are definitely popular and consumed on.
Yep.
A lot of them are on mobile.
Yeah, they'll sit there and they'll watch because I'm showing them how to make something. You know, my cooking videos, they'll do really well too, and they could, you know, be anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes because people have their phone set up and they're cooking with me. They're creating with me.
Sure.
So yeah, the time frame doesn't really matter.
How many are any of you guys cord cutters? Anybody that doesn't own traditional cable or anything like that?
I don't have
You
cable.
don't. And can I get a show of hands? Cord cutters in the room?
So what's funny, right? So
That's interesting. It's almost like half. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah,
my friend,
right
right?
away, yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously, go ahead.
Oh no, a friend of mine has cut the cord, but she, you know, for certain things, well, you know, she needs a
Baseline.
yeah, she needs a baseline or a password for something. Or, you know.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
stuff like Sling TV, which is kind
Yeah.
of incredible. I was on a TV show recently this year, and I didn't want to get cable. I was like, I'm never gonna see my show. This sucks. But Sling TV, you can buy like channels in bulk, and it's incredible. And you can watch online through your Xbox or computer or a mobile device. So I mean, do we need cable?
Sports is still kind of tricky.
Right.
You know?
Well, you
I
can
mean,
get- you
you
can get
kinda-
antenna.
I go to
yeah, I know.
a bar.
can always
for
find a
my
Well,
sports
that's
stuff.
true. That's true.
The irony of this is we're working on right now
Yeah.
on a cord cutters spot for a cable company, literally.
Oh, yeah.
And another company ran a cord cutter
That
spot
must be fun, yeah.
like yesterday, so we have to change it. So fun time. So you hit the nail on the head.
Sure. Well, awesome. I think we're going to allow some time for Q&A. So I'd like to have a round of applause for the awesome panel today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Well,
And applause for you.
thank
Yeah.
you. I
Great
appreciate it.
moderation.
I
Yes,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there's a mic or I can repeat the questions, but if there's any questions, I
question
think
right there.
there's one out there.
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to dig in a little bit more to the comment that Megan made about diversifying platforms. What are some of the legal contract issues with that? Are there technology hurdles that you guys see in the way? Do you see people already trying to fill that as sort of whether the right term, syndicators and multiple YouTube videos and accounts and all that? Is that happening? And are there
Yeah, actually, you're with Maker, right? So what's great is Maker and a lot of these MCNs are starting to do integrations with other platforms to help facilitate, you know, users being able to distribute to multiple places.
Which is amazing, by the way.
yeah.
It's so liberating.
Yeah, we made a deal with Maker about a year ago, and so it's a pretty seamless process with the Maker dashboard where when you upload to, we should talk about this, by the way. When you upload to the
Let's
Maker
talk.
platform, you can just do click on a couple other platforms, and it's a one load sort of situation where you can distribute to the other video platforms. I think they're doing the same thing with the short form video with Vine and Instagram videos. So a lot of the MCNs are handling some of those technological integrations, which is part of the fun, I guess, of having that sort of representation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so what we do to facilitate interest in our platform is we'll do licensing deals. So there will often be around windowing. So if a user or a creator will upload a certain type of, or a certain portion of their content to our platform for a window of a certain amount of time before they upload it to YouTube or Vimeo or anything else, then there'll be a minimum guarantee of revenue there as opposed to them simply getting a rev share. So there's different models that are out there. It's good for the creator because they get a guarantee amount of money that they're going to get. It also helps them because they start to get the wheels turning on their accounts on other platforms, where it's often really hard to start from scratch on a platform. I mean, I can't think of anything. I mean, that's, the way communities work on some of these platforms is a snowball effect. So if you are just building that snowball, it can take months and months before it starts picking up and rolling downhill. So anything you can do to get a platform to kind of meet you halfway and kind of help you to do that it is beneficial for the platform because it helps to grow their footprint on our platform, but it also helps them getting momentum and revenue.
Great. Any other questions? No? Yeah, go ahead.
Your content, my name is Peter. Hi, Peter Frosting.
Hey, Peter.
Hi,
Your
Peter.
content is so international and so fluid. Dailymotion is French in its essence. How are you handling captioning and translating into other languages? Are you doing it? Are you expecting the content to be created?
Yeah, on both YouTube and Dailymotion, you can upload with any of your videos a text file for whatever subtitles you want available. So that functionality is there. A lot of partners start to realize that their content is resonating in certain regions of the world. And they'll come to us and say, how can we differentiate this? And one of the things we first tell them to do, well, create an additional channel that's part of your network, title it BuzzFeed Espanol, make sure you have subtitles there, and those accounts tend to index in search, in internal search on our platform, and then it helps start to concentrate that audience that's looking to discover that kind of content in very specific channels. It's free to create channels on YouTube, on Dailymotion. If there's no cost and you can help to aid discovery in that way, then it's a best practice.
And so it's a best practice for the content creator. The platform's not providing that. It's not part of your...
Well, the platform provides tools. I think one of the ways we differentiate ourselves from YouTube is that we have partner managers that work with partners like Megan to try and figure out what levers we can pull internally to help aid discovery of their accounts. That's something I don't believe, has YouTube ever reached out to you and asked how they can help aid discovery of your accounts?
Mm-mm.
So,
I guess the only
yeah.
problem as a creator with that is that our content, is kind of exclusive. YouTube is where our audience is. YouTube is where our almost always guaranteed views are. And unless we have, a special licensing deal, then what's the incentive for us putting our content on all these other sites and our content not becoming watered down or losing its...
So yeah, that was a fear a few years ago where partners would come to us and say, what about the cannibalization of our account? And we took a look at a lot of accounts, one of which was CBS. When CBS came to the Dailymotion platform and brought their array of properties that they own, Entertainment Tonight has a channel now on our platform, Showtime. They brought a network of accounts, and we started looking at it over a few months. And we realized their growth on their other platforms, their proprietary platform, on their YouTube platform, were not being stunted in any way. They were just getting additional reach by using our platform. And I use a metaphor of going for a hike as how most people's experiences in a digital space. They're not going to a destination all the time. What people are doing is going for a hike. And you want to have your content along the path in as many places as it can be where people like to hike. Because that aids the discovery of that content. If you only have it at the end of the trail and it's not at any other place along there, you can get people coming to that destination. You can build a community where they're getting there all the time, but there's access to all, as a big of a behemoth as YouTube is, there's people using a lot of other platforms and in a lot of other places. So for instance, a partner like BuzzFeed, which is one of our partners, they've made a tremendous growth in their business by finding that they need to be in all the places where the communities are, as opposed to just, say, using their proprietary player or just using YouTube.
But do you see the conflict with the creator in doing that? Or with Maker, they have a window on my content. With YouTube, if I were to do YouTube Red, they would have a window on my content. Other than being on new platforms, like what does the creator get from that other than supplying you with free content?
Well, you get the revenue. So if you have non-exclusive content that's not being windowed by any of those other platforms, you have a massive archive of content, right? That's non-exclusive to any platform. If Maker can allow you to seamlessly syndicate that archive of content to another platform, there's just money sitting out there on the table because there's a
Is the split
So
higher
you're
than
saying
what
Maker
YouTube?
gets a share of it as well?
Yeah, well, yes, Maker gets a cut of your YouTube revenue too. It's not
Depending on
just
your
on
contract.
Dailymotion. Yeah. So basically, Dailymotion has a scale. We have 180 million unique users per month worldwide. It's about roughly around 10% of YouTube. Okay. So if you can upload your archive of content, and it can pick up over months that additional reach, that's just an additional amount of revenue that you can make on non-exclusive content.
Is the rev split more beneficial than what Google is?
Not only do we match or better than what you're making on, you guys are getting my whole page. Not only we're doing this for a whole group. Not only will we match or do better than your split. Actually, you should talk to your Maker partner manager because they'll let you know you have a really good split on Dailymotion. And so not only do you get a good split on Dailymotion, but one of the things that we don't have that YouTube, because they have a ton of marketing caps that are involved where there's only one pre-roll every 6 minutes. A lot of times when it's embedded off-site, they allow for ads to be disabled from publishers. We tend to have a higher sell-through rate. And so that allows for, not only is your split higher, but there's going to be more ads, there's going to be potentially more ad revenue.
Interesting.
I don't know.
See, Tariq doesn't try. He's known me too long. That's the problem.
Do we have more time for a question? Or
We got a question out there.
Yeah, sorry, I was asking all the questions. My bad.
It was a perfect lead-in because my name's Lance Johnson.
Hey, Lance.
We do digital advertising primarily for OTT, so we're always trying to explain to the content creators exactly, well, at least not explain, at least help answer the question, what are content creators getting for their work? Okay, great, you're getting a profile, great, you're getting followers. Okay, how are you monetizing? When can you quit your job at CPK and become a full-time content creator, not just feed the machine? And I personally don't have a problem, Reed or Anthony, with the pitch, because that's where the rubber's meeting the road. They're not out here doing it for fun. They are doing the work. As Ty said, real producers actually thinking about episodic content. They're actually doing this work. Everything's missing but a pathway to revenue. And if it can be a little bit more upfront, if it can be a little bit more content creator friendly and say, okay, here's where we see, we don't know for sure, but here's where we see your channel, your offering, your show, your entire library, someday meeting a point where it can generate revenue. No, we do want to do a split with you, but here's where we're going with it. We've got a partnership forward. That is the sort of conversation that needs to be had. And actually, I came late to the panel, but you saved the best for last. That's it.
We have a different sort of, we bring money, for branding, we bring money to the table from the rip. So when Megan and I talk after this, we're going to talk about, hey, are there some interesting things that we can bring you some money to do for brands? So for on our side, it's a little different because we're coming in the door because we're going to pitch things and then we're not going to produce it until a brand comes in and buys it. And therefore, we're able to, drive revenue to creators that way more
Yeah,
quickly.
and
That's planning before you start rolling the cameras about how you're going to
yeah, of course.
Do you still call it built if sold?
Don't be giving away the secrets.
As a creator,
This is a built if sold concept.
But as a creator, getting that extra revenue isn't always like, that's not the,
Agreed.
it's not the, oh, this is great. It's, do I have a promise of my content being seen on a greater level than what I do have with YouTube? Because then why am I giving you free content that's just only going to generate more views
And
on
I
your site?
understand what you're saying in terms of no, we're going to monetize, there's a higher share here, right? And it's ancillary revenue streams. But I think when you're building a brand, like Megan's asking the right questions, when it's like, am I going to lose any brand integrity outside of this platform? And this is a conversation we often have with any IP owner when we talk about going direct to consumer, for instance. And we say, you can really craft craft your monetization opportunity direct to consumer in a very immersive experience, but they say, am I going to piss off Amazon? Because even though like the rev share may be better here, like am I going to piss off iTunes or Spotify or whomever else the distribution partner is, because there's a volume play there, right? So because there's so much more, do you ignore that for a small opportunity? So I'm just saying, I think that there's a
completely, and I think
bigger
these are great
consideration
questions. They're
process.
questions we hear all the time. But I think from a platform perspective, I don't get pissed off at any of our creators if they are using other platforms. That's just not, I mean, what we're trying to do is help them get as much revenue and as much audience as they can for the content they're creating. And so if they have ownership, if they have this intellectual property that can make them additional revenue, we want to give them an avenue to do that.
I think as a creator, I'm looking for a platform to partner with to, let's build this together. Because I do have the audience that is, a little bit different than someone who's just creating content on YouTube and they're trying to make that their career. I've already made it my career. So how does our partnership benefit the both of us? Because I don't want to be on YouTube forever. It is not the end goal. It's the platform right now, and that's it. So that's what I'm
we
looking
hear that
for.
from a lot of people. It's like people want to be a brand. They don't want to just be a YouTuber. I don't know. I mean, it sounds to me like you're saying the same thing. It's like I'm not, I'm not this personality on YouTube. I'm this personality as a media entity. And so I think we definitely hear that, a lot.
I would be interested in knowing that. A partnership that would benefit the both of us.
I think we'll have
More
to
than
wrap
just
it up.
Things are happening right here.
I'm getting the cue, so we'll
wonderful.
have to wrap it up.
You
But maybe we can take it off stage. If you guys have questions, we'll be happy to.
Just throw it out there on how much better Ellen is doing right now off of YouTube.
Yeah. Sorry,
We're
we'll have
getting
to
a rap
wrap it
sign.
up.
We're getting a rap sign.
But
It sounds like
we'll step off and we can continue the conversation. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.